My name's Lizabela, and this year Thanksgiving wasn't an invitation. It was an ultimatum. Either you apologize to your father, or don't bother showing up, my mother's voice said through the phone, crisp and detached like she was reading a grocery list. I sat there, phone pressed to my ear, watching the city lights blink through my apartment window. The world outside looked festive. Gold leaves, cozy lights, people rushing home with turkeys and laughter. But for me, Thanksgiving had become a weapon. They banned me, the same family that I'd kept afloat for 3 years. The same people who lived in a house I paid for, drove cars I financed, and ate meals I quietly paid off behind closed doors. But now, apparently, I was too disrespectful to be part of the family dinner. The irony? They didn't even know I was the one who kept their lights on. If you've ever felt taken for granted, used, or betrayed by the people who were supposed to love you the most, remember this. You don't owe anyone your peace just because you once gave them your help. Sometimes, the best revenge is walking away with your dignity intact. Like, subscribe and share this story if you've ever had to choose yourself over family expectations. And tell us in the comments, what would you do if your own family banned you from the table you paid for? Because in the end, freedom is the feast they never wanted you to taste. It started small, like it always does. 3 years ago, Dad lost his job. He said it was temporary, that his company was downsizing. I believed him. I offered to cover the electricity bill for a month. Then the mortgage. Then Mom's medical bills. Every time I tried to say no, she'd cry. "Sweetheart, your father's pride is already hurt. Don't make it worse." So I did what good daughters do. I fixed it. Quietly. By the end of that year, I'd spent more on their lives than I had on my own. They didn't thank me. They didn't even ask how I could afford it on my salary. They just assumed the money came from nowhere, like oxygen, the Thanksgiving that changed everything. I'd taken 2 days off from my job as a financial analyst just to drive 4 hours to their house. I brought wine, a pie, and that tiny piece of hope that maybe, just maybe, they'd say thank you for once. When I arrived, Mom was setting the table. Dad was complaining about something on the news. My younger brother Ethan was glued to his phone as usual. Everything looked normal. Until Mom glanced at me and said, "Oh, Lizzie, about your seat." She pointed at a lonely fold-out chair in the corner of the dining room. No table setting, no plate. Just a chair next to the cat's food bowl. "What is this?" I asked, my voice catching. "Your father doesn't feel comfortable having you at the main table this year," she said. "Not after the disrespect last month." Disrespect? They meant the time I'd refused to co-sign another loan for Dad's consulting business. I laughed. "Not the funny kind. The kind that hurts your ribs. So, I can come," I said. "But I have to sit alone? Until you apologize," Mom said. "You know how much you hurt him." Ethan snickered from behind his phone. "Guess you're the family disgrace now, huh?" That's when I realized it. They weren't ashamed of how they treated me. They were ashamed they couldn't control me anymore. By the time dinner started, I was outside. They told me I could warm up leftovers in the garage if I wanted. I sat there in my coat, staring at a plate of cold turkey and potatoes, the sound of laughter echoing from inside. Every bite felt like humiliation, and yet, part of me still wanted their approval. Still wanted to be loved, until I heard what Dad said through the cracked window. "She's ungrateful. Thinks she's better than us just because she has a degree." Mom's voice followed. "She needs to learn her place." That was it. Something inside me shifted, quietly, permanently. That night, I drove back to the city. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just opened my laptop, logged into my accounts, and pulled up every single automatic payment linked to their address. Mortgage, utilities, car insurance, medical premiums, all of it, under my name, and one by one I clicked cancel. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I regretted it. No, that feeling never came. But because my mind was finally quiet. For the first time in years, I wasn't calculating. No more automatic transfers. No more reminders in my calendar that said, "Mom's gas bill due," or "Dad's premium renewal." It was over. The next morning, I brewed my coffee, opened my curtains, and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Freedom. It was terrifying and beautiful. 3 days later, Mom called. "Lizzie, honey," she started, voice sugar sweet. "There's a small issue with the bank. Looks like our mortgage payment didn't go through." I sipped my coffee slowly. "Oh, that's strange. Maybe the system's down?" Well, your father was hoping you could check on it. You know how confusing those online portals can be. I smiled into the phone. I'm sure you'll figure it out. Silence. Then the shift, her tone tightening like a thread pulled too hard. Lizabela, you know how important it is we don't fall behind. Of course, I said. But I've been doing that for 3 years, Mom. Maybe it's time you took over. Her voice cracked. Are you punishing us? I said nothing. I didn't have to. The silence was my answer. By the end of the week, the calls were constant, first from Mom, then Dad, then Ethan, pretending to check in, but really just fishing for information. Hey sis, he said, in that casual way that always hid something. Dad's freaking out about the car insurance. Said you probably forgot to renew it. I didn't forget, I said. Oh, so you're not paying it anymore? Nope. He laughed, short and awkward. Okay, but how's he supposed to drive? Maybe he shouldn't be starting fake consulting companies, I said. I could almost picture him walking into the living room, phone in hand, whispering, she actually cut us off. And just like that, the power dynamic flipped. For the first time, they needed me, and not the other way around. The family meeting. A week later, Mom texted me. We're having a family discussion on Sunday. You will come. It's time we fix this childish behavior. Childish. That word again. I decided to go, but not for the reasons they thought. I wanted to see the look on their faces when they realized who really held the power all along. When I arrived, the house looked smaller. The lights were dim, the driveway empty. Dad's second car had been repossessed. Mom opened the door with a forced smile. Lizzie, thank God you're here. We just want to talk. Inside, the dining table looked exactly as I remembered it, minus the warmth. Ethan sat with his arms crossed, avoiding eye contact. Dad looked like a storm in a cheap sweater. Sit, he said. I did. Calmly. Dad leaned forward. I don't know what game you're playing, but this family doesn't abandon its own. I raised an eyebrow. Abandon? You banned me from Thanksgiving, remember? That was different, Mom said quickly. You disrespected your father. I refused to fund another failed business, I corrected. Dad slammed his hand on the table. Watch your tone. And that's when I pulled out a small folder. Bank receipts, utility bills, mortgage statements, 3 years' worth of transactions. I spread them across the table. Watch yours, I said softly, because I have every receipt of how I kept this house running while you sat here pretending to be victims. The silence that followed was delicious. Ethan leaned forward, wide-eyed. Mom's lips parted, but no sound came out. Dad just stared, red creeping up his neck. I continued, my voice steady. For 3 years, I've covered over $98,000 in expenses, quietly, because I believed family meant sacrifice. But apparently family means sitting alone in a garage and eating leftovers. Lizzie, Mom started, tears brimming. No, you don't get to cry. Not when you used my kindness like a credit card. Dad finally spoke, voice low and shaking. We needed help. You needed accountability, I shot back. And maybe some gratitude. Mom reached out across the table. We can fix this, sweetheart. Just help us one last time. One last time. It was always one last time. I stood up, gathering the papers. You'll be fine. You just have to live within your means, like I had to. Where are you going? Ethan asked. Home, I said. The one I actually paid for. Dad muttered something, probably an insult, but I didn't listen. As I walked out, I heard Mom call after me. You'll regret this, Lizzie. I smiled without turning back. I already regret staying this long. When I closed their front door behind me, it didn't feel like leaving a house. It felt like escaping a cage. For 3 days, my phone didn't stop buzzing. Calls, messages, missed FaceTimes. Mom tried sweet talk. Dad tried guilt. Ethan sent memes, like pretending everything was normal could erase what happened. I ignored all of it. For the first time in years, my apartment was quiet, and I realized I didn't hate the silence anymore. Silence used to make me anxious. I'd fill it with the hum of work, the glow of spreadsheets, the constant background noise of just one more favor. Now, the silence was my reward. Freedom tastes like coffee. Every morning, I'd walk to the cafe down the street. The barista Maya would smile at me like I was her first customer of the day. Black with cinnamon? She'd ask. Always, I'd say. It became a ritual. Something small, something mine. No calls, no guilt. Just quiet mornings, clean air, and the simple realization that my paycheck was finally I started budgeting again. I'm not for survival, but for dreams. I signed up for a painting class, booked a solo trip to Italy, bought a new couch, the kind that wasn't secondhand or stained with other people's problems. It was strange. Beautifully strange. The more I built my life, the less I missed theirs. 2 months later, I got a text from Ethan. Hey, Mom says the power company's threatening disconnection. Can you please help her out just this once? She's crying nonstop. I stared at the screen for a full minute before replying, she's had 3 years to learn how to pay a bill. She'll figure it out. He read it and didn't respond. The next day, I got a call from the bank. Apparently, my father had tried to open a joint account in my name. Without my permission, I went cold. He'd actually forged my signature. I drove straight to the branch, shut down every link to their profiles, and had new security locks added to my accounts. The banker looked at me kindly and said, "You must really love your family to have supported them like that." I laughed under my breath. I did. Once. When everything crumbled by midwinter, I heard through a mutual cousin that their house was up for sale. The mortgage had defaulted. The utilities were in arrears. Dad's consulting dream was dead, and Mom had picked up part-time work at a grocery store. Ethan had moved in with his girlfriend, apparently tired of the drama. I didn't feel joy when I heard it. Not the way I thought I would. Revenge isn't always fireworks. Sometimes it's a quiet sunrise. The world finally balanced again. What I felt was clarity. They'd finally been forced to live like adults, and I'd finally stopped being the family wallet with a pulse. The unexpected letter. One morning in March, I got a handwritten letter in the mail. The envelope was thin, the handwriting familiar. Mom. I almost threw it away. But something, maybe old love, maybe curiosity, made me open it. Lizzie, your father's not well. He's been bitter, and I know we hurt you. We were wrong to take advantage, but I hope one day you can forgive us. We miss you. I miss you. I still make that cranberry pie you like? Love, Mom. I read it twice. Then again, no manipulation. No demands for money. Just words. Simple, small human words. And for the first time since that Thanksgiving, I cried. Not because I missed them, but because I finally understood. Forgiveness doesn't mean letting people back in. It means letting their control go. Rebuilding me by spring, my life was unrecognizable. My walls were covered in art. My bank account was stable. I laughed again, genuinely, freely. One night, while sketching in my tiny living room, I thought about that Thanksgiving. The garage, the leftovers, the shame. And then I smiled. That humiliation had built the woman I'd become. Resilient, self-sufficient, unshakable. I wasn't the family's financial crutch anymore. I wasn't even their daughter in the same way. I was Lizabela, a woman who chose peace over approval. Sometimes it whispers. In the quiet confidence of not answering the phone. In the soft joy of spending your own money. In the calm knowledge that you owe no one anything anymore. My family had taken my kindness for weakness. What they didn't realize was that kindness has a breaking point, and when it breaks, it rebuilds into strength. It had been nearly a year since that Thanksgiving, the one that burned my old life to the ground. I wasn't planning to see them again. Not for holidays, not for birthdays, not for closure, but life has a cruel sense of irony. It was early November when I got another call from my cousin Claire. "Lizzie, your dad's in the hospital," she said softly. "Heart complications. Your mom's alone and scared." For a few seconds, I didn't breathe. Then I felt something strange, not guilt, but a quiet ache, like an old scar aching when it rains. "I'll think about it," I said, and hung up. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept replaying everything, the garage, the humiliation, the words, "You'll regret this." And now here we were. It didn't feel like I thought it would. 2 days later, I drove back to my hometown. Same long stretch of highway, same faded gas stations, same feeling of holding my breath. The hospital was small, sterile, quiet, smelling like antiseptic and regret. When I walked into the room, Mom was there, hunched over in a chair, her hands clasped tight. She looked older, smaller, the kind of small that doesn't come from age but from years of carrying too much guilt. When she looked up, her eyes filled instantly. "Lizzie," she whispered, standing. For a moment, I didn't know what to do. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I hugged her. She broke. Just broke. All those years of pretending, of power games, of pride. Gone in a single trembling sob. "I'm so sorry," she whispered against my shoulder. For everything. I didn't say it back. But I didn't pull away either. Seeing him again, Dad was asleep when I stepped closer. There were tubes, monitors, and that faint hum of machines keeping time with his heartbeat. He looked human. Not the booming, self-righteous man who used to slam his hand on the table, but just a man who had lost more than he'd ever admit. Mom brushed his hand softly. He's been different, Lizzie, since you left. I believed her. People always change when the mirror disappears. When his eyes fluttered open, it took him a second to recognize me. Then he whispered, "Lizzie?" I nodded. He looked away, his jaw trembling. You were right. About everything, the words landed heavy. I didn't cry, but something inside me softened. He continued, voice cracked with regret. I was angry because I felt small. I took it out on you. You didn't deserve that. For years, I had fantasized about hearing those exact words. But standing there, I realized something. I didn't need them anymore. I'd already made peace with myself long before he did. A different kind of Thanksgiving. A week later, I found myself at their small rental apartment, a far cry from the house they once had. It was humble, simple, quiet. Mom had invited me for Thanksgiving dinner. No pressure, she'd said. Just family. No conditions, no garage. I smiled at that. When I walked in, there was no fancy spread. Just a turkey, 2 side dishes, and a single pie, cranberry my favorite. We ate together quietly, carefully. The conversation was tentative at first, about weather, recipes, small things. But somewhere between the second serving of mashed potatoes and the last bite of pie, something shifted. Mom looked at me and said, "You saved us, you know." I frowned. I didn't. I just stopped helping, she smiled sadly. Exactly. We had to grow up. We had to face what we'd done. For the first time in my life, there was no guilt sitting at that table. No manipulation. No power games, just people. As I drove back to the city that night, the sky was deep purple, stars sharp and cold. I rolled down the window and let the wind hit my face, thinking about everything that had happened. Sometimes love looks like sacrifice. Sometimes it looks like distance. And sometimes, the truest kind, looks like boundaries. I didn't cut them off to hurt them. I did it to save myself, and somehow in the process, it saved them too. When I got home, I lit a single candle and sat by my window. No noise, no drama, just peace. It had taken years, tears, and 1,000 heartbreaks, but I finally understood what revenge really was, not destroying others. But reclaiming yourself that Thanksgiving, I didn't eat leftovers in the garage. I didn't sit in silence while others laughed. I sat at my own table, with peace as my guest. And if I ever have a daughter someday, I'll teach her what my family never taught me. That love isn't proven by how much you sacrifice. A year later, Thanksgiving looked different. No chaos, no phone calls asking for money, just silence, warmth, and peace. I cooked a small dinner for myself, lit one candle, and finally felt at home. Halfway through eating, my phone buzzed. It was Mom. Her voice trembled softer than I remembered. "Happy Thanksgiving, sweetheart," she said. Dad waved from the couch. "We're proud of you, Lizzie." It wasn't an apology, but it was peace. After the call, I smiled. Not because they changed, but because I did. I raised my glass to the quiet. To freedom, I whispered, and to never mistaking silence for weakness again. That night, I didn't feel alone. I felt free.